Financial and Legal Issues, Part 2.
Most people consider it a tool of the aging process, but there is nothing that would stop me from having a power of attorney. And in fact, there are clients of DART's who have a power of attorney that is held by their attorney. And then as the older adult, and then it only becomes effective when that client says, all right, now I'm ready for my children to take over. And then the attorney hands out the power of attorney.
Are there reasons to do it with a spouse?
Well, I would think if you had a spouse who was maybe just diagnosed with a chronic illness, yes. Otherwise, it kind of feels to me like a prenup, you know, kind of like I don't trust you, and
there's no advantage.
No, no.
Okay.
So the truth is, none of us know when our life is going to take a left turn.
Right, and Ross was 62.
Yeah. So at what age?
Right.
I'm 61. I'm just saying, I work with a woman who went in for the healthiest woman I have ever met in my life. Went in for her annual physical and was called back 4 days later because there was a problem with her blood test and she has leukemia. None of us know when our life is going to take that left turn. So let's go back to the journey we're taking with our elders can be a partnership. And we can all do better, yes. When a person is incompetent, hospitals want to make sure that the person they choose is the person making those decisions. And I can tell you, we do this with about 1,100 clients in Dakota County. And there are stories after stories of mom has told you what she wants for her care. Do not resuscitate, do not intubate. But there's a family crisis, and so a sibling comes in from Florida who is rightfully feeling, oh my word, I've missed so much time with my mom. You need to do whatever you can to get my mom through this, when you know that's not what mom wanted. There's got to be some comfort in the fact that somebody knows what mom wants. And so now we've already gotten ourselves into the healthcare directive, and we're running short on time. So, and I know that's just as powerful an issue as the power of attorney. So let's move on. Oh, one quick moment on guardianship and conservatorship. So there are people who don't have a family member that they can call on, don't have a niece or a nephew or a child or a grandchild. We have a client who we'll call Ethel, who has mild to moderate stage dementia. And our service coordinators know the day's going to come when someone's going to need to take care of her. The problem is she doesn't have anyone she trusts. She doesn't have anyone who is part of her family. So we know that eventually we're going to need either a guardian or a conservator. And again, this feels silly talking about this in front of people from the Department of Human Service, but the difference is a conservator literally conserves the money. A conservator makes the financial decisions, and a guardian makes the doctor's appointment and makes the hair appointment and sees to it that the groceries are brought in and is concerned about nutrition as well. And that's the difference between a guardianship and a conservatorship. All right, so the healthcare directive is the next big piece that hopefully you can walk through with your older adults. In your folder is a 16-page packet put together by the University of Minnesota, and it is excellent. So as you take this home and your elder is going to have questions that you and I didn't think of today, or your brothers or your sisters are going to have questions about healthcare directive, then please consult this, because this will really answer a lot of questions on the healthcare directive. But I'm going to pull out the two center sections of the healthcare directive. And this is the actual form. So there are 2 pages, this one, 2 sections. This one being the primary section, the one that says Minnesota Healthcare Directive, and then the one that says Minnesota Part 2 of the Healthcare Directive, really gets more detailed into the wishes. Back in the 80s and 90s, we used to call this document a living will. And in some states, they are still called living wills. The problem with a living will is a living will was only enforced when the person was terminally ill. Well, there are a lot of people who have chronic medical conditions or chronic disabilities, long-term disabilities, that need someone to act on their behalf. And a living will was technically not the right instrument for that. So in the late 90s, the state of Minnesota changed to the healthcare directive. So if you know someone who has a living will is still absolutely legally binding and a good instrument to use. But now if you go to find a living will, you're going to come up with the healthcare directive, and that's the document you want to use. Excuse me. The healthcare directive doesn't just apply to making decisions while your loved one is in the hospital. It applies to making decisions about home health care and what gets done or not done by home health care personnel, or in an assisted living facility, or in a long-term care facility, as well as in a hospital. So let's kind of walk through this, and some of this you're already an expert on because it's much the same as what we were talking about with power of attorney. It's just delegating a different set of responsibilities. So my personal information, my name, my address, goes up here at the top. And then I am naming someone to be my agent. And I am naming someone to act alone. One person is going to act alone. Or two or more people to act together. And for some siblings, that can be reassuring. Perhaps Mary doesn't want to be the one who has the sole responsibility for whether or not we stop life support for mom and dad. I mean, think about it. That's a huge responsibility. So maybe as Mary's walking through that, she'll say, Mary, how about you and I, she'll say to her mom and dad, how about if I do that with John's help or with Sarah's help? So that there are two people there. May or may not make the older adult feel more comfortable, but it may make the healthcare agent, which is now what Mary becomes. In addition to being a daughter, she now becomes their agent. So then on page 2 is where you actually name them. So you actually name my primary agent, my first alternate, my second alternate.
Excuse me.
Yes?
When there's a first, second, and third alternate, or in the scenario that you gave where the burden of putting mom or dad down, so to speak, is a heavy burden. But what happens if mom and dad definitely have got it down in their directive that they don't want to be intubated, they don't want any extreme measures, and you can honor that, and a sibling is believing that mom and dad, there will be a miracle drug invented.
That's part of the conversation that needs to go on before you fill this out. And keep in mind that part 2 is going to gives mom and dad the opportunity to go through every scenario, conceivable scenario. We know there can be more. But you need to, they need to be sure that the people they're appointing are the people that understand it's about their journey. It's about their aging, and it's about their dying, and it's about their comfort knowing that that's what's in front of them. Certainly there are cases where that isn't part of the discussion, but hopefully you as coaches for your parents now after this meeting are going to know to have that conversation with them about who they name is important because it's about their wishes. And it might be just the other way around. They might want every last effort to be made on their behalf. Then they need to be sure that their healthcare agent envisions their aging that way as well. All right, so you've now named the agent. And again, it's going to go through the different priorities. The one thing I want to be sure that you understand, remember when we went through that power of attorney and you get all the rights to to sign checks and write checks and buy real estate, but it is only this person who has the health care directive, where if you look at the second bullet from the bottom of page 2, it is the person with the health care directive that gets to choose where I live when I need health care and what personal security measures are needed to keep me safe. So the person with the health care directive gets to decide that whether mom and dad like it or not, they're no longer safe to live at home, and I am going to put them in an assisted living facility. The person with the power of attorney gets to sign the check, but the decision to do that. Now, that doesn't make it any easier to get mom and dad out the door. That's a whole nother situation, and we'll talk about that in upcoming presentations. But it is the person with the health care directive who actually gets to make that decision, or has to make that decision, about where mom and dad will live. Then again, everyone wants an original of this, so please make sure that you get several signed and notarized copies of this. Going through this with 2 mothers-in-law in Illinois, I can promise you that the medical community does not move without this. Everything that happens in the medical world is private, and it'll stay that way like never before, like it never happened in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. But it's a different world now, and this becomes the instrument that can move that mountain.
I haven't run into any problem with people taking photos.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I just...
You may very well, that may very well be the case. There are also, we run into that probably 3 calls a month from everybody wants the original, everybody wants the original. That would be just fine with me if people weren't that fussy. I know the same thing happened when my father passed away. I couldn't imagine how many people needed the original death certificate. Really? Really? Anyway, the one other thing I wanted to say about this, these 2 documents work just about anywhere in the world except with the federal government. So if you need to make financial decisions for a person getting Social Security, for a person retired from the railroad or retired from the post office, please know you need to contact them and get a separate form. We just had a woman call us last week. She and her husband had moved, and she wanted the Social Security, the address changed on the Social Security. He is at the moderate stages of dementia, and even though she has his power of attorney and his advanced health care directive, the Social Security Administration would not change his address in their paperwork because she did not have their form. So just a caveat that please contact Social Security, and if there's a federal retirement involved, you would want to get them involved because they like their form better.
And isn't there also a death benefit that's payable from Social Security? A death benefit?
Yes, but you just need to be named as the beneficiary in that. And all right, so.
But the VA system does take these.
Oh, good, good, yay. All right, so now let's just spend a few minutes on long-term care insurance. Do any of the elders you care for currently have long-term care insurance as far as you know? Oh, yay. So long-term care insurance is relatively new. This is one of those opportunities for our generation to learn from our parents about the importance of long-term care insurance. Long-term care insurance does not just apply to nursing home stays. Long-term care insurance can also apply to in-home health care. It can also apply to parts of the services being provided in an assisted living facility. And the older you get, the older you are when you first apply for long-term care insurance, the higher the premium. So at 55, your premium may be $100 a year. At 65, your premium would probably be $300 a year, and it goes up. Most employers, I don't know about the Department of Human Services. I know DARTS provides long-term care insurance, and it's just a good way to get it as part of a group package. And then when you leave employment, you can just, at least in our case, we can just continue that long-term care insurance after we're no longer employed. So let's talk, though, about long-term care. Yes?
The state doesn't provide it, but they have a good provider.
Good.
Right through the state.
All right. So you can get, all right, so you can get it.
Policy.
Right. And in truth, that's the way it is at DARTS as well. It's part of a menu of services we can elect to take, and it's just, it just makes good sense. So what if someone is in a long-term care situation? What happens when they can no longer afford that long-term care? Does anyone have an idea of what a year in a nursing home costs?
About $8,000 a month.
Right. So on average, statewide, in 2012, which is the most recent statistics, $82,000 a year. A person diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia spends on average 9 years in a long-term care facility. So you can see that the lifetime earnings and financial assets of that person can quickly become depleted. And so then what happens? Then, well, you guys probably know as well as anyone, then the state comes in, they become qualified for Medicaid, and the state steps in to help with those federal programs. So then, they need, in order to become qualified, there we go. So a person should get long-term care insurance if they have assets over $100,000, if they have an annual income of over $30,000, and they can afford the rising premiums, because again, premiums will rise as they age. They qualify for Medicaid if they are a single person, not a couple. They have assets of less than $3,000. So now they've spent down from their lifetime earnings to a total assets of $3,000. Their income, then 100% of their income goes to the nursing home, and they get to live on, it's now $89 a month. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but if you think about they're in a nursing home and they're getting $89 a month, but all of their meals and all of that is taken care of. In fact, we have cases of people who don't spend the $89 a month, and then their assets get up over $3,000, and they no longer qualify for Medicaid, and they have to spend that down. So I know it's like touching a spider web when you touch this, you know, how it all gets sticky, but it's the best system we've got. So if they're a couple, it would not be fair to have the person who has the medical needs take care of all of the assets. So then for the couple, they do get to keep some of the assets. They get to keep half of the assets for a minimum of just under $30,000 and a maximum of $104,000. So at least if the husband has a chronic disease and needs nursing home placement, he's not depleting the assets of both members of the couple. I know I just kind of glanced over that. One more thing to say on long-term care, and that is that there are lots of regulations around gifting. So if you've given someone a gift over the last 5 years, that can reduce your assets. And again, you guys probably know this as well as I do. But and see this part, consultant attorney. As you think over just about anything I've said today, you're thinking to yourself, but how do we protect X? At that point where it becomes that complicated, that's the time to consult an attorney. If there's a trust involved, if there's stocks involved, if it gets complicated, if you're not comfortable with feeling that your parents are cared for appropriately by these documents, consult an attorney. And keep in mind, there's always a will. These are just ways to help you deal with the caregiver role as we go along. So I want to be sure and leave you with some resources. Those of you who may live in Dakota County, I hope you know, if you have questions, call DARTS. But there are also resources statewide. Here in the Twin Cities, call the Senior Linkage line. They will help you connect with resources anywhere around the metro area. If you're caring for a loved one in outstate Minnesota, in greater Minnesota, there is minnesotahelp.info, and it is a website where you can go and search. Mom and Dad live in Bemidji and I need help with snow removal. Mom and Dad live in La Crescent and I need someone who will help create an attorney. You can go to minnesotahelp.info and put in where they live and what service it is you're looking for, and it'll bring up the list of providers. And then what if you're dealing with family in Florida? There is Elder Care Locator. And Elder Care Locator is, again, that kind of a search engine for anywhere in the United States to help find elder care resources. Here in the Twin Cities, there's also an affiliation of 3 agencies called Elder Care Partners, and it is DARTS, Senior Community Services, and the Wilder Foundation. And we partner together to create caregiver support. So caregiver education, such as we're doing here, caregiver support groups throughout the Twin Cities, some of them that are during the day, some of them that are in the evening, and caregiver coaching. So if you need that kind of help with your specific caregiver journey, please get in touch with Elder Care Partners, and one of their brochures is in your handouts as well. All right, I know I just kind of breezed through long-term care, but you guys probably know long-term care is better than I do. Oh, well, I don't know that there's ever a time to get off the pony for long-term care. I would say the time to get in on long-term care, because the sooner you get in, the lower your premium starts. So generally, people at about age 50 are looking at starting on long-term care insurance. And that will keep your premiums will still go up, but they will not double or triple by the age of 65 if you start at age 50. They'll still go up, but they won't go up. The difference between starting at age 50 and starting at age 60 is 3 times the cost. But that doesn't mean that your premiums from age 50 to age 60 are going to triple. You've started at the lower rate, and you will continue to rise, but at that lower rate.
When you get to 70.
You know, the older I get, the more comfortable I'd be that I had long-term care insurance. It's certainly an individual decision, and if the cost of long-term care insurance is affecting the quality of life that they're having, then maybe I would consider dropping it. But
Compared to the $9,000 a month of
exactly.
cost for long-term care.
Right. So let me ask, if they're 79, roughly do you know what the cost of long-term care insurance is?
I think he mentioned something about like $350 a month.
Really? I would look for another. I would talk to a financial advisor.
Yeah, but to switch companies when you're that old.
I don't know, but there is magic out there. You know, there are resources that we don't know about that can be activated if we just keep asking the right question. Anybody else? All right, in 2 weeks, my presentation will be on family caregiving strategies, and that will, especially, I come from a family of 7, so I will speak with great enthusiasm about family caregiving strategies. Thank you all very much.